Well, I can't believe we're here again. We're in your studio, and we are so honored to be with you. I mean, the studio is one of the great ambiances, one of the great environments that I've ever been in. We spent a day, a few of us with you 2 years ago, and the studio is the home. It's the creative space in which you to create new and create thought and create art. And so I want to be so grateful, Allison and Alex Gray, to be with you today and to catch up with you and hear what you're up to and see some of what's going on in this place and to share it with our viewers. So welcome. You need no introduction.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil, Dr. Phil, and friends. Isn't it great to be with you again?
We're super grateful, and also the folks at Burning Man. We just send our love, and everyone involved in the medicine community, and visionary art has always been kind of linked with psychedelic science. I think Stan Groff really was one of the first to solidify that connection. And so whether it's really acknowledged or not, it's been a kind of a tacit friend or accompanist to psychedelic science, because the remarkable thing about psychedelics is that they're highly visual, and that is such a difficult thing to articulate with words. And so picture makers at least start to point to this language of symbols that seems to be the coin of the realm in the divine imagination. So we're honored to be here today and to cover some of the subjects that we are so completely fascinated by and have dedicated our lives to, the exploration of consciousness.
I wanted to, I hope that it would be all right if we shared our experience of ketamine, because I don't think I've ever done that. And you are, in our minds, a great expert in the field of healing with the use of ketamine. Would that be all right if we talked about that? You can cut this out if it isn't.
Sure.
Okay.
I'd be glad to do that. I'm honored.
Well, it was a great, it greatly affected us and influenced us early on. In fact, I believe it was the, maybe 1980, like around the early 80s, when we had a series of ketamine experiences in a therapeutic style. We had them in our loft in Boston. And we had appointments. It was very much about going inside, and the experience was usually we invited people because we had that possibility. We had a very good friend who was a psychiatrist and brought musicologists and other people to administer in a safe injected form. And it was a 55-minute experience that was extremely, profound and unlike any other psychedelic experience, which we had had many at that point of various kinds. But this was extremely unique in this particular series. And I'm honored to remember my mother, who had her only psychedelic experience with us under the influence of ketamine, and never forgot it, and always wanted to have more secretly for my father, frankly, who was way too conservative to consider it. But it profoundly affected us and our work, and it was a great honor for me to be able to share that with a parent. Of the 4 parents, we did get to share that with my mother. And my experience of it, lying still and not talking or touching and just going, was Alka-Seltzer in water, basically, count down from 10 and you're like Alka-Seltzer, you're just evaporated. And then you are hurling through space and time in a sort of black and white textural field in my memory from so long ago that it's so vivid to me even now. But yeah, but the thing that really affected me, and I remember so well, was the ending, because it is so precise in its ending. You don't have to worry about taking it with you. It just, you basically drop back in like a thread that's like going through a pipe, and then you're just kind of dangling in there for a little while. And you realize the thing, I think that the takeaway that I think we both had so profoundly was more than, I mean, we'd been developing towards this basically with all the other psychedelics, I'm sure, but it's, I am not my body. I am not my body. It was the most profoundly effective knowing of our ability to transcend the physical, you know, and fear of death is like Alka-Seltzer in water. It's just like, you know that you are more and other than and greater than something that lives beyond the body and without the body, because you feel like this thread is now popping back into your bones. It's like popping back into your tubes. Like we're just tubes, you know, all we are tubes. But in the middle, there's this invisible thread that just popped back in, and you kind of rattle in there a little while until everything kind of, you know, comes back to how do you recall it, Alex?
Well, I think that there are many reference points that would be similar to what Allison said, because this was an injected session, and it was
a series.
Yeah, but the what it propelled us into were more formless states of awareness. Previously, with the classic psychedelics, I think I had become more familiar with the archetypal, more Jungian and psychodynamic levels, as well as the cosmic and I would say more like the visionary Sambhogakaya references, the visionary intermediate realms that they all the, you know, angels and luminous forms and luminous archetypal realms to other more energetic heavens. But I had not, prior to the experiences with ketamine, experienced the more formless experiences that had more to do with a sense of consciousness being an energy that perhaps was even being propelled through space, you know, at enormous, it seemed like enormous speed, you know, that we were like speeding through textural, formless space. And so it would, to my mind, it was more like being a black swan going through textural clouds, you know, of subtle mists and things like that in a new moon kind of night, you know, that was dark but cosmically vast at the same time that it was that you were moving through a kind of formless space. There were then, of course, the integration of consciousness in its entirety, as if it were your physical body that had been temporarily removed, and kind of it was like the cosmic taffy pull, you know, when music would come in. And this was one of the things that I thought was especially amazing. as the we're so sensitive to aesthetic influence under the psychedelic kind of mind states, and and sound particularly being a very deep and influential part of most journeys. And if it's used psychotherapeutically as a is a planned kind of journey, I think that this was an important part of our trip that
It was
recall.
synesthesia is all I wanted to really
Yeah.
say. It was like you could taste the sound. It was completely synesthetic. And we did have our psychiatrist liked to bring a music therapist. So she.
Let me ask you a question, and I hope relevant. You use the word Sambhogakaya, referring to the energy realm within the Buddhist cosmology, and you were a student of Namkhai Norbu's and a Dzogchen practitioner, as I have been as well, remembering him fondly. I've felt that the ketamine experience and Dzogchen really kind of came together for me to enable me to practice Dzogchen more deeply and continuously. I wonder how the two came together for you.
Well, I did not encounter Norbu's work until the later 80s, and it was, I think maybe 87 or so, 86, 87, before I read Norbu's work and started to become part of the Dzogchen community. And that was well after we had done our dosing with ketamine and had kind of gone through that. We were not yet in the club days of the K party scene at all. And
or the Burning Man days of the K&D experience.
No,
which we also did.
That came later, but we never got into the drug scene with K bumping and dancing and things like that. But that we know was a big part of it. But in terms of the relationship with the Dzogchen, I felt like that was one of the reference points that I then had to these more formless and Dharmakaya-like realms. I wouldn't really have a, like Garb George used to say, the first nail. You really need some kind of taste.
Yeah, you need a reference experience.
Well, don't we want to know, though, how you feel it's affected your Dzogchen practice?
I was curious. Could you tell me more about that?
I'm honored you're asking. I think it's profoundly been mixed for me together. I came upon Namkhai Norbu in the mid-90s. And by then I had had my first ketamine experience, which was profound. And it was really a dissolution of form. And, you're always struggling with Buddhist tenets about formlessness. And what is formlessness? And there I was propelled into a full energetic experience of myself, formless, ego dissolved, thinking I had died, and yet experiencing extraordinary clouds of energy and color and synesthesia, as you mentioned. And so bringing it back, it seemed to me that what I was learning within the Dzogchen practice of mindfulness and letting go of attachment was a profound motivation to let go of attachment through the ketamine work. That the holding on, whether it's 5-MeO-DMT, shorter, but the ketamine letting go is such a profound way to enter a realm in which we are expansive and in which we're not holding on to attachment. And that's a lot of our integration. We had talked about it when we met. A lot of our work is to take that experience where you've left ordinary mind and gone into a liberated space of some sort of consequence. A lot of us have colors or philosophical things or cosmic experiences, and then come back from that realizing you are much more than this ordinary mind. You don't have to be that ordinary mind. And so the letting go as an anchor is very supportive of Dzogchen. I hope I've answered that as well as I can.
Well, I think, is it Thread Cho is all about cutting through?
Sure.
That's it. It's like, it's a chemical cut through.
It's Manjushri's sword going.
There you go. That's right. Yeah, discriminating wisdom will cut off the bullshit.
Well, was your scholarship in Buddhism started before Namkhai Norbu, and then you were led to Namkhai Norbu? Is that what happened?
No, I had always been pursuing Zen in my way, and I had a teacher, Sultram Alioni, who we love dearly, and Sultram was my first teacher, and she was a Namkhai Norbu disciple. Well, maybe we should leave these complex realms that are a bit esoteric. Let me ask you this: how has ketamine influenced your art, if at all?
I was just looking at a work of art. It's the oldest piece of my work that is in the Victorian house the guest house. And somebody was in there, a guest, and said, "This reminds me of ketamine." And I thought, oh my God, this is exactly the period in which we had these, series of experiences. It was maybe monthly, but I was doing works that were like Alka-Seltzer dissolving in water. Those pieces that were very washy, and then these sort of squares were kind of like floating out.
Are you an Alka-Seltzer addict, Allison? I'm getting a little worried here.
I've never even taken Alka-Seltzer, but I remember the commercials vividly from the 50s and 60s. With that little guy. They made it for children. It's so horrible that they did that. Little cartoon characters, but he had a little hat, and then it would turn to bubbles. Everything would turn to bubbles.
Well, there is a sense of effervescence.
Yes.
In the dissolution state. And there are probably references, because I don't want to leave the Tibetans too soon. Because for me, Tibetan Buddhism has been a heck of a lot more influential on my artwork than ketamine, frankly. But the experiences that the substances can give you, like you were saying, 5-MeO, that's like a pure Dharmakaya kind of opening for many people, doesn't it seem?
Yeah, I think it's the most profound letting go. I mean, you can't hold on with 5-MeO. If you have a real journey, you're zoomed. Just go, try and remember, but you don't have control. It's the profoundness of fully letting go of control, which is one of the great, kind of teachings, I think. I think it's with ketamine as well, if you do an intramuscular, and the advantage is you have a much longer period to be in a state of mind than you do with 5-MeO's 12 minutes. But I mean, I've had extraordinary journeys, sounds like you have, on 5-MeO, in which you just move into another realm, boom, you're gone.
But I'd just like to jump into the conversation, although I don't have all that much to share, although I wore a Milan for many years, and I went to many retreats and many programs with Namkhai Norbu. I think my Buddhist education actually started with Dalai Lama at Harvard when Alex was working there. And we took a 5-day course, I think, with him, and his first visit to America. And I was, turned on to Buddhism. But before that, I was initiated into Sikhism. So, you know what I mean? I am a Jew, and I am studying Judaism a lot now, a lot more than any of the others right now. But I feel that my psychedelic experience basically brought me to God, you know, and to knowing God, knowing this is what people call God. This is what all the mystics call God. And I knew that, and I remembered it. And I continued to, and after seeing it the first time, you know, when you go back into psychedelic states, you can call it up more easily. And then in everyday life, walking in the woods and everywhere, you can sort of call it up even more. So it's the knowing that you can't unknow, and you keep, you know, and so our art, well, it was our intention early on when we met each other, although I had taken a lot of psychedelics before that, but it was our intention that we make art about the most important thing. And that was our experience of God. I mean, there was just nothing else that we had in our life. We hadn't become parents yet, and it wasn't comparable to that anyway. But there was this incredible vision that you have, and if you don't try to point to it with an unsharpened stick as much as you can, you know, like do all you can to try to point to that perfection and that amazing, even a glimpse of it, even a tiny taste of it, you know. I think that's really, you know, a passion. It's like finding your passion is finding your subject, the content of your work. That's the most important thing that an artist can address.
Well, by becoming familiar with the psychedelic mystical experiences and the mystical experiences or out of body experiences that it seems one has with ketamine and other dissociatives and things, and then the full-on melting into Godhead or the boundless state with the 5-MeO. These chemical reference points give the meditator a way to look toward, here's what it feels like when you've reached these open and engaged kind of spiritual flow states. And so it gives you a familiarity with it, a taste of it, and you can then also feel the contraction of your body mind when you're out of those states. And in this gap, then you negotiate the rest of your spiritual path and practice. And so I think that, you know, if there weren't such a stigma around psychedelic medicines and things, that they could be accommodating the spiritual practices in all the different traditions, if they would let them in. I always thought that all of the churches should be the ones that are saying, we have to legalize psychedelics because then you'll see God. Everybody will get it for themselves, you know, that spirit really is out there trying to help us. And if we'd only tune into the sacred dimensions that are all around us and that support us, these are the kinds of, I think, breakthrough experiences that psychedelics enable us to have. And ketamine, I think, gives us I think it resets something in our body mind. It kind of clears out a lot of cobwebs, you know, that there might be some kind of fabric of discomfort, anxiety, fear, depression. It kind of builds up a calcification of the same kind of thinking, just negative thinking over and over again. A blast of ketamine is like shock treatment for the etheric kind of clouds. And it kind of makes a sunny day for a moment in the context of one's being. A possibility for one to write their own future instead of be doomed to relive some past trauma.
And that's because you recognize the responsibility that you are for everything that you have become. You know, like right in the psychedelic experience, either LSD or, you know, I think LSD for me, you know, early on, it was really the responsibility that you have for everything you have created so far, even like knowing that, that you chose your parents, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And I think I always sort of felt that in a weird way, because I felt myself creating myself small. I knew that when I was very little, you know, that I was creating myself small, and I did it, you know, physically.
Well, if you're able to align with the divine process that brought you to this moment
That's right.
and just say, okay, whatever I had to go through, it was worth it because this moment, this now is transcendent. Now I have access fully to infinite love. Now I know that spirit is real. Now I know I'm not limited to a physical body. I'm going to, boom, gonna continue on the adventure. Who knows what dance will be next?
And that nothing's impossible. That's another big takeaway. You know, you think you want something, you better work your ass off if you really mean it. You know what I mean? There was that kind of feeling. You know, the whole idea that, well, that was MDMA a lot too. It was like that you can, you can want something and actually manifest it.
What would you say for each of you was the seminal kind of opening to your art, the inspirational opening in terms of a psychedelic? Was it LSD that opened you? Tell us a little bit about that. Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think so for Alex either. Knowing him as well as I do, I can say that I think an artist is an artist their whole, you know, some people become an artist and they recognize it later, or they have it suppressed when they're very young, and then they know that's their identity, and they burgeon forward and become an artist. So there's no time, you know, Grandma Moses was in her 90s before anybody had seen her work. So but I don't think that. I think that we're always artists, and that the psychedelic uh, is a non-specific amplifier. It's like whatever you know you are, you cannot hide from it anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, if you think, oh, well, you know, maybe I should, you know, go into business art because, you know, it's just a thing, you know, that I can do, and, you know, I can make money, and I know I can support. No, it won't let you, because your mind says you're an artist, and you've always been an artist, and you were an artist when you were in nursery school, and you were an artist when you were in high school, and in college you went to art school. What are you thinking? You know what I mean? So you have to do it all, and it makes you bigger. It allows you bigger. Like, you should be bigger. You need to do more, and not just for yourself, but for others and for the world. The service piece, you know, and how you can help, because the compassion piece, you know, big, you get more compassion, so you want to like do what you can to help. But you know that your best help, the best thing you can do to help, is to follow your passion. You usually can find a way that your passion, I mean, hopefully, can be of service. That's your, you know,
Well,
that's
that's a
your goal.
choice.
Yeah.
That is a total choice that an artist makes, I believe. But regarding my uh, inspiration, of course, I believe, like Allison, that that I probably was an artist in my prior lifetime. In fact, I have a good guess about what artist it was. But
Do you want to share it, or is it a secret?
Talk about your past life. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's
okay,
do it.
this is a painting that is based on another basically work of art by someone that I consider the best candidate that I've ever. There's no other person that I've felt this connection to, and it's been an uncanny connection for decades now.
It's an artist named
Jean Delville. He was a Belgian symbolist who died in January of 1953. I was conceived March 3rd, 4th of 1953. It's within the 49-day Bardo period. So, you know, there's a possibility there just in the terms of physical and karmic continuity of consciousness. He also was a theosophist and called a painter of astral light. It's that he basically was a spiritual artist and felt like he was unable to complete his mission in the prior lifetime and wrote a book called The New Mission of Art. I found this book and was greatly inspired by it, but realized it wouldn't read well for today's audience. So I rewrote the book and also
Entirely.
called The Mission of Art.
Right.
And I had to do it again, basically. And so I think that the idea was to basically bring people back to the spiritual importance of art, and that art can serve everyone's spiritual awakening. And so we wound up creating an art church, basically, because it coincides with that. And my own experiences of God, although I went to church as a boy, you know, grew up Methodist, but then my parents left the church in a huff one day. I didn't know why, but they seemed to throw God out with the whole congregation. And so rather abruptly, our religious education ended, and I became then kind of curious about this God thing. And so I guess the rest is history, but at the age of 21, on a fateful day, I had decided that suicide was the best route out unless God could show me a way, a reason to go on living, basically. So I was finished with life at the age of 21, which astonishes me, you know, but I was miserable. And so I had a classic psychedelic LSD experience that was in Allison's apartment. I was invited to her party. I was going to go home and basically think about ways of killing myself, but I was saying goodbye to my professor on the street corner there. And Allison comes around the corner in her VW and says, "Hey guys, I'm having a party later. You know, it's the end of school, you know, so come celebrate."
I was the chairman of my prom too. I always gave parties. Alex was at my party.
This was a lifeline.
And this is where Alex took his first LSD.
Yeah, my professor, God bless him, brought acid. He must have intuited my needs. He said, you know, he just told me what was in the Kahlua and LSD, you know, hey. And so I drank half of it, gave the rest of it to Allison.
Who had, you know, started actively psychedelicizing when I was 17, and I was 23 at this point. So I was giving a party and I was taking it, you know, it wasn't, but it was for you.
My first journey. It was
and you were sitting on my couch. I was
yep. And
we never left, really.
I went through a spiralic tunnel in my head. I was in the dark, but I was going toward the light. The light was God. I could tell this was everything that I ever wanted to know, all wisdom, all knowledge, all love, all, you know, all the answers were there and accessible. And I could see that although I was in the dark, I was going toward the light. So I had a path, I had an orientation. And the thing that connected all the polarities were all the shades of gray. So at that time, I decided, okay, the gray thing is important. And that's basically why we changed our names.
We did. But of course, first Alex thought it was between gray and X. It was just, his whole name would be just X. That's what he thought. He was going to call himself X. And then I said, you know, like, I like the gray. Gray's good. So we both took gray. And we
Was
did
a-
a performance, and we did a performance marriage as well. We had a real marriage, a real wedding, real Jewish wedding.
True.
And then we had our performance wedding called Meditations on Mortality, where we marched around naked in front of people.
Well,
How long have you been married?
45 years, I think. You know, 1975, we started to live together. And like the next day, after Alex had his first trip, he asked me out. I didn't even like think of it that night of the party, and he asked me out, and I was like, I had never thought of going out with this guy, but I invited him to my party. He was working for our professor. He was his studio assistant, and I was going out with the professor. So I would see him in the studio, and
And Alex, did your suicidality ever recur, or that was it?
never
it's
at all.
one dose.
One dose.
And me. That's it. The two
well,
of us.
Yeah. If you find
And you. So let's.
if you find love in the flesh, and you've seen it at the core of your being, you feel like there's hope. I saw that like you know, it was kind of like whatever that the angels who arranged these coincidences had to be very busy that day.
Well, I have to say this. I started tripping, you know, recreationally. I think that's so absurd because I think that I was evolving, I was learning, I was bicycling with my friends and climbing mountains and camping around fires, tripping and that sort of thing. And all that was very important to me for the first 6 years of psychedelics and college. And then I saw God. Well, it was really 3 years in. I had the God experience. I followed what Ram Dass said to do and Be Here Now in 1971. He said, you know, he basically suggested going into a dark room. It was the first time I'd ever heard that suggestion, like you should go and do it by yourself in a dark room.
Practice,
It
yeah.
didn't occur to me until then. But anyway, it evolved into a spiritual life, which I had already embarked on. And I met Alex, and he saw God. And that was it. Nobody had ever said that to me. Even in the context of Yogi Bhajan meditations and all, people didn't talk about their psychedelic experience leading them to the spirituality. And later, when we went to the Namkai Norbu retreats, Alex would go around like he was doing a, you know, like a social behavior experiment, and he would ask everybody where they first noticed their spiritual bone in their body that made them go towards Buddhism or go towards a spiritual life of meditation. And they, without exception, practically, except for maybe the Tibetans, you know, it was all of them psychedelics. So, but that happened to me by myself in my room after reading Be Here Now. And then 3 years later, Alex went, you know, put the God button on it. And I went, wait a minute, that happened to me. And this has changed my whole life. And I haven't been able to tell anybody. It was very undercover in the 70s, you know, mid 70s. Yeah. You'd be afraid they would kick you out of school. You know, just even, you couldn't even talk about it. So.
Well, Alex, I always had an amusing little playful question for you. You know, you've been quite an adventurer, and the two of you have been performance artists. And I have that picture in my mind of you taking off your clothes at the North Pole. And I think, wasn't that a little suicidal? There you are, unless you were on ketamine, so you didn't feel anything. But I mean, just that's an amusing little story.
I think that was right around the time, actually, Phil. You put your finger on it. I think that I was very close. I came back from that trip and was had those questions.
So that was before the
Yes.
LSD experience.
Yes.
So people don't really know. Let's just tell it for a moment. You could tell it. You went to the North Pole, to the what is it? The gravitational.
Well,
geomagnetic observatory.
It's really I guess it is kind of strange because it all happened in the month of May, and went up there and see, I had been studying polarities basically. And I thought, like, I knew nothing about non-duality at all. And I was 21, and I just was interested in consciousness, and I just started to look at Robert Ornstein's stuff about the hemispheres of the brain and things like that. And I just started thinking, everything is, I was so caught up in my mind, that everything was about polarities, the rational, the intuitive, the Apollonian, the Dionysian. I was also into Nietzsche and all this stuff, and so um, I, I felt like I had been also having a lot of nightmarish dreams. And in one of these dreams, I saw my hair half shaved. And so, I mean, you can sort of see one half is lighter than the other. This was due to my half a year where I shaved half of my hair. And so this half I just kept shaving. And I kept it that way half a year. And during this whole year, I was studying polarities and doing explorations of it. So one of them was that the Earth is a magnet. Why don't I study the North Pole? And one of the things that was fascinating about it to me was this thing called polar wandering. And polar wandering is this effect that, all of our compass needles point to the North Magnetic Pole. However, the North Magnetic Pole is moving. It is wandering. And at the time that I went up to the Geomagnetic Observatory, it was only moving a few degrees every year. Now, they had to rewrite the maps and stuff. And this phenomena called polar wandering, which is a lot more extreme at this time, almost scary, I have to say. This polar wandering was this amazing kind of metaphor to me that we depend on our compass needles to point in the right direction, and yet that location is always moving. So as long as we're fixed in the outer world, trying to get our bearings and orientation, likelihood is you might not. And so the real orientation happened later that month on your couch, really, where I got oriented to the divine light inside. And so it was all about getting your polarities straight. And also, instead of this war of polarities and dualities, polar unity was what I saw in my core. The dark came right into the light, that they were one thing actually braided together. And that when the same energy, it's like the Vajra. In the center, it's the non-dual center, and then you can go in one extreme or another and polarize. But really, the trick is to stay conscious of the center, where you're non-polarized, and really keeping that state, especially today, when we are pulled from one depth of despair to the hope the next moment, and then dashed every day, it seems, that it's important for us who are still working in a meditative way to keep finding that medium.
We've been teaching, and based on our experience, that the feeling of balance, which does occur within the ketamine experience and serves as a reference, that feeling of balance, which we do all kinds of mayhem to, or is done to us to lose it, that sensation of being in balance or out of balance is the orientation of our lives at the center of the Vajra. And that's what we can teach and help people to find with psychedelics, with meditation, with all the rest. But maybe we should start our tour. What do you think?
I just heard somebody
Perfect.
coming. John's here. John.
Okay, let me switch the view.
He's gonna get his camera. I don't think he's got it quite yet.
Okay. Well, I'll switch the view and we'll see what we have.
Yeah.
Okay. So cancel the spotlight view. And
Bill,
wow, that's something else.
I think it's been on Spotlight View the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, make sure it's on. Okay.
So I think we have to go back to it. Did you guys want to, there's John. So John, what would you like me to do to get us on? Tell me when you're ready.
So there should be a
3 dots.
called the studio camera.
Yeah.
If you want to spotlight the studio camera.
Yes. Spotlight the studio camera. There you go.
All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and mute this other camera and turn this one on. One moment.
I don't mean to hog the show. Did any of you want to ask a question or make a comment? Unmute, Sonny.
It's just so delightful. I'm enthralled with the conversation. It's beautiful. I think Martin had a question for Alex and Allison.
Yeah, just that there's this question maybe you could explore a little bit more, which is the numinousness of the sacred as a force to imbue into the object. In other words, if there's this mana or this enchantment that is retained by a ritual object, for example, a spiritually charged painting, or if it's more accurate maybe to say that the artwork is the trigger for an archetypal numinousness within.
Were you able to hear that?
We're muted.
1 second. This is going to. Okay. Volume's up and mic should be on.
Okay.
Could you give us that question one more time?
Yeah, it was just that, like in a lot of
Second.
a lot of ritual art has, it's been intended to hold a charge of this spiritual experience and hopefully transmit that somehow. And I think that's a big part of your art. Do you feel like that's its own energy that you can transmit, or do you feel like it's mainly there to trigger some archetypal resonance within us?
I think both. I think that that sacred objects are implanted and empowered with the energies of the consciousness of the maker, and really it's their intentions that bring it to life. And so I think that the art objects, whether they're magical, ceremonial objects, intentionally or unintentionally, they are downloading the worldview of the maker into it. But that maker is also a medium themselves for higher forces or lower forces that can embed themselves somehow and entangle themselves with these objects. So depending on what state of consciousness and openness one is to it, in the Ethiopian prayer scrolls, a priest may, attempt to pull entities and things off of a person and embed it in a work of art, and so their Ethiopian prayer scrolls have, kind of spirits wrapped up in them. And so in a painting like this, this is a painting called The Great Turn. And it's a painting I've been working on for basically months. And you can sort of see it's a polarized being. You know, this one's kind of lurching toward the light, you know, that reference. This is a direct reference to that, you know, tunnel of light and consciousness that I had early on, you know. And so this being is doing their best. And maybe what's really weird, this happened way before the corona virus thing started, but there's a strange thing about the crown, and it's kind of crowning, and the spirit, you know, spear is kind of like coming out of his head. Now down here, things aren't going so well. This guy's kind of blown out, and yet I've been getting to know him, and you know, there's a kind of he knows something, you know. It's the shadow, and it's also, there's a dark light element that they both embody. Now there's a kind of torquing of space here, you know, where the twist happens. And so the question, you know, remains, which way are we turning? And there's a tunnel of consciousness that goes from the depths to the heights. And it's our task to, I guess, wrest ourselves from the web. In this case, it's red, white, and blue. Did you notice? Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I've been up to just recently.
Do you want to talk about the study you're in?
Oh, here's an interesting study that happened for it. Now, this accompanied the Tool Fear Inoculum CD, which came out actually August 30th, 2019, just 1 year ago. And this album is one of the most prophetic albums of all times. Fear Inoculum by Tool. It came out, it won a Grammy. It was immediately #1 on the charts of albums. And fortunately, my artwork was associated with it. And so there was a version of The Great Turn, the study for The Great Turn in that album. So the painting that I'm working on now, which is the actual Great Turn, is already famous and known by millions of people around the world. There are t-shirts of this painting, although it isn't finished yet. So it's a very strange painting, and this rock group has been instrumental in helping me to really realize it. So it's been a very strange thing. But the Fear Inoculum, so the first lines of Fear Inoculum are, contagion, I exhale you. So this is the only rock album that I know that won a Grammy that was predicting the pandemic, and their tour was interrupted by the pandemic. So it's a very weird and uncanny kind of a thing. And this painting points to the difficult struggle that humanity's in at this time. And Allison has been working hard too.
But the thing is, I want to say about the Fear Inoculum album and the Tool, those of you who may not be familiar with Tool, this is Alex's third album with Tool. And the first two albums were explosive as well. And last year at Burning Man, on this day, we were on the Abraxas, like a 2-story, 3-story moving vehicle, an art car. where we were, we were kind of like in this sort of, it's like a ship, and you're overlooking the whole playa, and there were 2,000 or 3,000 people there, and we were advancing the new album, playing it on the playa for the first time. It was being released that day, and we had it airlifted in by parachuter, came into this is how big a deal it is, came into the playa and because they wouldn't release the album until that day, so we got it that day. And we had this, crowd around the Abraxas. They were all dancing on the playa, and we were like projecting, because that's the thing about Burning Man, if those of you who haven't been there, is that you can play music as loud as you want.
Allison, Abraxas is going to be on the virtual playa. So you're going to ride Abraxas on the virtual playa.
We're totally there with the Abraxas. Now, this is my side of the gallery. Alex and I have shared a studio for 45 years. We actually moved in together maybe 10 days after we met. We moved out of our apartments. It was the end of school. So we moved into an apartment, lived there for 9 years, built that from the ground up, everything. We put everything, the floors in the kitchen and everything, we put it in. And it was a rental. So of course we were kicked out, and we moved to New York, where we built another loft. But we've been builders all this time, and we built this studio. John, do a little pan in the studio, because we're going to do a studio tour. So that's Alex's altar. There we go. And there's William Blake and Michelangelo busts, Alex's scaffold, because the painting that he was just showing you was 10 feet tall by 8 feet wide. And he's been working on it months, if by months you mean years. This piece being finished this time with. When was this piece finished, actually?
Yeah, last year.
Not this one. This is your self-portrait.
Yeah, this one's rather recent. Before the pandemic hit, though, I had a really weird visitations were on a daily basis by Anubis.
Yeah, Anubis is he ushers the dead. So Alex was a mortician. He worked in the morgue. So, but anyway, this is our shared materials corner. We've shared paint for all these years too, because we always had the same studio. For some reason, we just didn't need to put a wall between us. We just kept going over to each other's side to see what the other was doing. And we just didn't have a separate studio. But we made 2 studios, but we didn't, this is where I
talk about.
Well, this is the new piece that I just finished. See if I can, well, I think you can see it all right. Let's pull this. I don't know. We're calling it, tentatively, we're calling it New Order.
New chaos.
New chaos. No, new orders over here. Show the new order, John. I did 2 new orders. John,
I'm getting
could you just show what I'm talking about? Thank you, my love. There. Yeah. And but anyway, these are new order. They go on either side of Theolong. They're going to be an Entheon, I think. And then this is new chaos, which I just finished moments ago, days ago. And, I would say it took months, which is actually true. But already I've started on another watercolor. And then this is called Realms of the Unpronounceable. Now, what the heck is my work all about? And why do I say it's psychedelic even? Well, to me, this is the ground of the vast vista of fountains and drains through which the symbol system, or a pool of it in which the symbol system sits. You see these symbols and they're like interreflective, but they distinguish themselves. And what are they? They are the symbols of all the material things. They're the symbols of all the thoughts that become things, like your voice and your words and your writing and your art. And it's really like the basis of art is symbol making. So I was essentializing, and I think psychedelics taught me to essentialize my worldview. What is everything? What is everything? Well, everything in my worldview was chaos, and then order, and then secret writing. So that's, and the secret writing is, you know, this piece is called The Realms of the Unpronounceable. I have a piece called The Nameless Presence. It's not meant to be translatable. It's made up by me. I don't try to translate it. It is a symbol that we are symbol makers, and it is art. That's why it's art. It doesn't, like, it's not writing in that sense, but it's secret writing. Secret from everyone. It's the secret juice that makes us create, and that comes through the divine and pours out through our hands or our feet if we dance, or our instruments. So anyway, it's just, I'm feeling that flow when I play piano. I'm teaching myself to play piano, and I feel the flow of, you know, something that is wordless. It's
You know, we have DMT circulating in our brain. It's never been quantified. It's small, but we have DMT in our brain, and no one's ever really figured out what DMT does. But if it's doing fractal work in our brain, I mean, why do we see fractals when we take a lot of DMT? Maybe the fractal is the motion forward that inspires this kind of experience of art. Who knows? But it's kind of interesting.
It makes a lot of people want to be creative, and we know more people than we can name who decided to make art, even in addition to whatever else they're doing in their life after becoming psychedelic. It just makes you know that you're a creative person and you want to find outlets for it. And another thing you want to do is you want to find a home for it. You want to find a place where you can talk to other people about it. It was why I gravitated so quickly to Alex, was that there's somebody else that I could share that thing that I could never unknow. It's just in there and I know it, but I can't share it with anybody, and then you find people. And so to create a container for that became what we just, I don't know, evolved into.
Right.
A center where people could talk about it.
Well, by meeting the others all around the world at conferences and at festivals and various other things, people who have had these experiences, what I've discovered over decades is that artworks can be a language that unites a community. When someone can say, it looked like this, and they said, I know what you mean, then that validates someone who may have been uncertain even about their sanity. Most of the psychedelic experiences that happen in our culture happen outside of medical framework. So there is only cultural reference points, not a psychoanalytical or psychiatric model available for every psychedelic experience. As much as we'd like to, and it'd be a lot easier if it were available and useful and without so many legal restrictions and things, you know, then we could start to have a meaningful dialogue and work with people with these substances, because they, in addition to our spiritual practices, like creativity and things like that, it is ways of accessing the divine realm and then serving it up, becoming a medium. And so that is really one of the purposes that I think that the Buddhists introduced as well, which is this idea of planting a seed of liberation in the mind stream of the viewer, that is a seed of potential for their future spiritual awakening or furthering. And so that's the intention that I believe that in the spiritual light that you bring in your work, and in the symbolism and philosophical questions that are raised in my work, and a lot of the beauty of the visionary art tribe, we're all trying to open up that portal for people.
I feel that.
Speaking of portal, two things. May we see a bit more of the studio, and then tell us what's happening with Qasim, so that we
Yes.
really hear where you are. When we were there almost 2 years ago. Things were really moving, but hadn't finished. So we'd love to hear how it's progressing and when you're going to have your fabulous opening.
I wanted to respond for a moment, though, on the level of the spiritual life and art, and that is that, you know, I created my work as a meditation, and I recommend it to people that we even have someone who teaches art as prayer here. To create your work as a meditation is to sink into this incredibly blissful relational state with the divine, the creative relational state. And we try to do that here, segue into Cosm. We do that here at our church when we meditate together and make art. So we, you know, in silence. So we do that and just see what happens if you practice art as a spiritual path. And that's really what Cosm's sort of core values say, is that art is a spiritual path. And we experiment with that by sitting together in large groups and making art together to music silently. Just go inside. And so it's a great practice, and Alex and I do it every day. It's the one thing we love to do the most. So we made it into a practice, and it's art as a spiritual practice. I mean, I created all of those squares so that I could have, you know, infinite hours to paint them all in, you know, and all my work is like that. They all represent times in my life where I sat for long hours. So it's been glorious. And yes, we want to tell you all about Cosm, but Alex is going to show you our prayer wheel first, right?
Yeah, well, this is a world prayer wheel, and you can see the world is a little on a lotus of space, on a DNA spiral, enshrouded in a angel's kind of wings. I sort of see this as the angel of the electromagnetic field around the earth, you know, and with the electromagnetic field, it is really already impacted by the solar winds and things like this. So it has a shape somewhat like that. At any rate, it's possible to spin the prayer wheel, and it has different world wisdom traditions, Judaism and the cross there in Islam. You've got the Great Mother and the indigenous native traditions, the psilocybin mushroom. There's a Hinduism and Buddhism and Taoism and Baha'i, Sikhism, and you know, it just tries to point to a lot of different of the paths. It's got the Om Mani Padme Hum, Oh Hail the Jewel in the Lotus chant of Tibetan Buddhism with a Vajra in between. And then there's a inscribed prayer, sustain the web of life. May peace prevail on earth. May all beings be liberated. And may the elements be purified. So.
Right on. And this is going to go in Entheon. This will be at the Ridge table. First thing you do is you walk in, and you can turn the prayer wheel after you enter. So that's what's going on. Now over here, we have Dr. Hoffman.
Yeah, well, part of the psychedelic reliquary is going to be many relics with Albert Hoffman's that we received from his family. This was a sculpture, bust that was done by Suki Barber, a wonderful sculptor, who came and measured his head with a calipers and stayed there with his wife for a while, and they got to know each other. She's a charming sculptor, and so she donated this bust of Dr. Hoffman that will be on display, along with a hat that the family gave, the glasses of Dr. Hoffman, and a hair from Herr Hoffman. So this is a first, a second, and a third class relic. The painting itself has the inscription on the back and the molecule, so that it's basically
that he signed.
That he signed.
He signed on his 100th birthday. We were there. in Basel, and Alex brought the painting, and Dr. Hoffman signed it, and put a molecule, drew a molecule on the back. So we have a case that we built basically around Alex's 3 portraits of heroes. I mean, there are 3 paintings. There are 4 heroes. There's Dr. Hoffman, there's Doctors Shulgin, and there is Dr. Groff and Christina in the picture as well. And so we have that case for relics, for psychedelic relics. And you'll see that in Amphion.
A number of amazing relics that have been donated as well. We have some really important relics from Ralph Metzner. I'm grateful to say.
Let me show you something else. As long as
yeah.
you're here, look, let me show you something else. This is a sculpture by Ryan Tottle, a multi-Oscar award winning animator for Disney for movies like Frozen and stuff like this. And he was the designer of Entheon. He worked with Alex. Alex was the designer, excuse me. I'm sorry, Alex. Alex was the artist, designer. Ryan Tottle was the sculptor, the modeler. He knows how to use the program to create what Alex wanted. And they worked together for 2 years to create the model of Entheon. But right now, Entheon does not have this exterior, this beautiful countenance. The countenance is going to be added to a very minimalist box that it is now. It's a beautiful minimalist box, though. It's an armature for this. This is what we're doing. We're finishing the interior of Entheon. This is the Sanctuary of Visionary Art, a 3-story visionary art experience with some of the most precious contemporary art and art by some artists that are seminal to the field of visionary art. And so this will be the first time that there is a permanent structure open to the public that focuses and reveres visionary art. And this is the door that Alex designed and drew and had sculpted for the door of Entheon, doors of Entheon. There are 2 4-by-8 foot metal doors. Do you want to stop? Oh, 2 4-by-8 foot metal doors that weigh 800 pounds apiece.
Yep, and they're being engineered in New Jersey, and they're soon to arrive here. But it's basically called Creating a Better World. And Adam and Eve are artists, and they're painting the idea of all kinds of things. They're harvesting the tree of wisdom, which is all the different world wisdom traditions. And there's a web of nature, a tree of life, ooh, and a lot of mushrooms around the base. Anyway,
these are the soul birds. They're in actuality 9 feet tall with the base, and they will be installed in the center campus side, the opposite side, in the they're beautiful. They're already made. They're gilded and painted and ready to go. We're ready to start to set up.
Yeah, we have the steeple head on the building already. The steeple head is simply the people of the 4 directions coming together in visionary oneness.
There you go. So
the Blue Hoffman
will be shown in this psychedelic.
Albert Hoffman and the new Eleusis, and this was an allusion to his interest in the roots of psychedelic culture in Western civilization. And of course, we have the Eleusinian mysteries that involve the mythology of Demeter and Persephone, and what seemed to be some psychedelic rituals that celebrated the arrival of spring and the departure of Persephone underground during those 2 kind of equinoxes. And so it was known that Socrates and Plato and a variety of the Greek philosophers and the citizens of Greece were psychedelic. And they said something like, the race of gods and unities of all things can be seen even with closed eyes. So that pronouncement by Proclus as one of the Eleusinian initiates says that pretty clearly they were having psychedelic experiences in the Telestrion here, in the town of Eleusis. And so, here it is, which is, oh, thank you. So ergot, of course, we know, is the basis of LSD, but it was his theory, Albert's theory, that perhaps some of that got mixed in with the kykeon, the psychedelic brew. Well, also you've got the psilocybin mushroom here, and all what I consider to be the first evidence of psychedelic visionary art was the cave paintings in Tassili, 10,000 BC, of these that really Cat McKenna brought to everybody's attention first, and the sprouting mushrooms all around this bee-like shaman. Yeah, good old Terrence and Paul. Oh, Burning Man. Yeah, you can see through the very top that my idea of Eleusis, really, this future world is the world that we're living in now and that we're living in the festival culture. So you're living in the new Eleusis, yo.
9 p.m. on Saturday, the 5th coming up, there'll be the virtual burn. So the man will burn virtually. It should be quite spectacular. I'm proud to say my son Helix is the author of the Infinite Playa, and it's quite an undertaking. So we're going to show your interview here probably Sunday before the burn, and you know, yeah. Well, Sunday will be the temple burn. Saturday is the man. So we hope you'll join us for all of that.
Well, whenever, we would love to. Thank you, Phil. Thank you for visiting today and for discussing these matters of the heart and spirit. We love you guys.
And we are so
And
grateful.
to everyone at Burning Man.
So grateful and so well taught. Thank you both. Thank you. Thank you.